So my father died when I was 19, and actually in the few years before, or maybe the year after, but both my grandfathers had died as well. I think the main thing that I take away from that is just it's a reminder that life is short and you need to do the things that you want to do. It was just, a reminder that you don't have forever, and so, I should do the things that I want to do. I think that's probably the biggest, lesson or whatever I've taken from all that. I mean, there was never a moment where I decided, now I'm going to climb for the rest of my life, but it's just that every day I wake up and I'm like, I'm going to go climbing. Yeah, I've just always liked climbing more than everything else. I mean, people ask like, oh, when did you decide you wanted to be a professional or that you were going to be a climber? And it's like, I've never decided that I'm going to be a climber. I just go climb more than I do everything else. It's interesting because I feel like I just as easily could have gone any other path. I could have stayed in school. I could have been an engineer. My big adventures could have been, who knows what? Maybe, I don't know what's adventurous about engineering, but I'm sure there is. Because, looking back on it now, 10 years out, you're like, oh, I dropped out of school to become a climber. It's funny because when you're on the path, you never think you're following a path.
Right.
I was just like, I was living in a car, living in tents, just going climbing a lot, and it doesn't feel like a path until many years later when you look back. I was reading climbing magazines and looking at images of Peter Croft. He was sort of an iconic free soloist from the last generation. I grew up seeing images like this of Peter and thinking that that was what I wanted to at least try someday. This climb, this picture of Peter is on a route called the Rostrum in Yosemite. It's like 800-foot wall in Yosemite National Park. And so this is actually a photo of me climbing that same cliff when I was 20, I think I was 22 at the time, and it sort of marked the beginning of my serious free soloing. But the important thing about this climb for me was that it represented the edge of what was possible at the time. I had grown up looking up to people who had done things similar to this, but when I did this climb in Yosemite, I was now reaching the edge of what had previously been done by really anybody within climbing. And like I said, I was 22, and so I was suddenly left with, what's next? What do I do now? Because up until then, I'd had something obvious to strive for. But as soon as I did that, I was like, oh, now it's up to me to sort of decide what's next and figure out what I can actually do. First started thinking about free soloing El Cap in 2009, I guess. And so in 2009, I was like, all right, it's happening. And then I showed up in the valley and looked at it and was like, oh my God, it's not happening. But, and then each year thereafter, I'd look at it and be like, oh no, not this year. But I was definitely thinking about it sort of in the back of my mind all the time for years and years. 10 years ago, if I was magically transported to this position, I would have just peed my pants and fallen to my death immediately. It would have been completely out of the question to do anything even remotely like this. And yet, on the day that I actually free soloed El Cap, it felt incredible. I felt like I was swimming up this beautiful crack. I was surrounded by air. There were birds flying around behind me. I was like, this is the most heroic place on earth. I feel great. And really, that's a testament to the effort that I put into it over the 10 years. It was such a long journey for me to get there, but by the time I was finally ready to free solo El Cap, it actually did feel great. And so I think, if anything, that's kind of what I want to leave you guys with, is just the process of taking something that should be incredibly scary, something that seems risky, that seems scary, but through this incredibly long and really fairly difficult process, slowly making it feel comfortable. Yeah, so I started a nonprofit, I guess maybe 4 years ago. Climbing has allowed me to travel all over the world.
which has really opened my eyes to how the rest of the world lives. I mean, I see all these people. I mean, there are like a billion people on Earth without access to power. And so I started my foundation sort of as an attempt to like balance the cosmic scales. So I've been giving maybe like a third of my income every year through the foundation to like environmental nonprofits, and so like off-grid solar projects, things like that, like things that lift people out of poverty, but also help the Earth.
Well, I mean, honestly, I would hope that anybody has some kind of actual personal growth over 2 years of, over 2 years of life.